Hey everybody, welcome back to Tom and Jesse Talk Movies.
Hi, I'm Jesse.
And I am Tom. And today August is M. Night Shyamalan month. Very exciting stuff.
Hope we cleared the calendars for this.
Yes.
I know he did.
First up, we're going to be talking about his film The Village from 2004. And then the next time in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about The Sixth Sense.
Very exciting. Who's that star?
That stars Bruce Willis.
Mr. Bruce Willis.
Yeah. So yes, The Village came out in 2004. I was 15 when this came out. I saw this in theaters. This was a first time watch for you.
Yes, it was.
So I'm very excited to hear your opinion on this. I had seen, like I said, the movie in theaters. I watched it a bunch of times on DVD. It's been quite like over 10 years since I've actually seen it. So I was like, let's talk The Village.
Absolutely.
Definitely, you've never seen it. Perfect opportunity. So we are going to discuss in a little bit. This is an open spoiler discussion because this is the kind of film, and M. Night Shyamalan is the kind of director who's known for twist endings. And to really dive into this film, we do have to talk about all of it.
Right.
If you have not seen it, turn this off and hey, watch it once you watch. Come and revisit it once you watch the film. So we're going to be going into some spoiler territory.
We're normally pretty good about avoiding spoilers,
We are.
but I think that you would really have to be very deliberately evasive, and considering that there's a large portion of the movie would be a spoiler, it would be very difficult to discuss without getting into it. So
Exactly. Yes. So you've been warned. So The Village is, first M. Night Shyamalan. We'll talk about him a bit since we're spending the month on him.
Sure.
His recent film called Old, O-L-D, came out end of July. And we were like, hey, what about, M. Night Shyamalan month for August? So he's a director that he's done a ton of films. The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs with Mel Gibson. Most recently, he did Split and Glass, The Happening, The Visit, Lady in the Water. So
the duality of M. Night Shyamalan.
Yes.
The really good and the not so good.
He is known as in the earlier days, the early 2000s when he was at his A game, he was known as like, we might have another like Hitchcock kind of director here. He's known for doing horror films, but more psychological horror films. I guess you could also call them dark dramas or thrillers. They're not really like, movies like Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. Right. These are films I would compare to like Psycho, Vertigo,
yes.
Frenzy, things like that. Definitely a little bit of he's, I would say his earlier stuff, a bit of an auteur director, puts a stamp on certain things, sometimes uses the same actors, primarily likes to shoot in like Philadelphia and Pennsylvania area. He's kind of like he's known for his twists, and I get a bit of a Twilight Zone vibe, which I'm a huge fan of Twilight Zone. That's who he is overall.
Auteur is a really good word to use, and I think especially because like his personal stamp is on every one of his movies, and whether he's most of the time he's writing, directing, so he'll throw himself in as an actor.
Right.
And in fact, one of the references, I got like really strong Hitchcock vibes. This isn't really a spoiler, but like the way that Hitchcock used to insert himself in a film, sometimes you see like a reflection or something like that.
Yes.
And there's a particular scene in Village where your introduction to M. Night Shyamalan's character is like through a reflection. So he really, I definitely see where the influence comes from. And I certainly think that he would love to fashion himself as a Hitchcockian sort of.
You don't have to be into scary movies to really watch his stuff. So I would say Hitchcock is a pretty good example. So this was your first time watching the movie. I'm dying to hear your thoughts.
It was. Do you want to get into a little bit of the premise again?
Yes.
You're forewarned. We'll be getting into the spoilers now. So if you want to pick this up after you watch the film. But the movie itself, it takes place in a village. It's kind of like what would you consider the community?
I guess like Amish. I would say like Amish farm commune sort of thing.
Seemingly taking place, would you say? I mean, it's like
colonial times,
like
maybe 1800s or so.
Right.
And
from the dialogue to the mode of dress,
the costume design, it's a bunch of people living in this village, and they're a very close community. and there's an elder. What's the word I'm thinking of? Elder.
Like it's like an assembly,
exactly.
Assembly.
Political board, council board. That watches over the village, and on that board we have Sigourney Weaver and William Hurt, Brendan Gleeson, of course.
Right.
A
lot of big actors and actresses.
Yes, and they watch over this village. It's a simple kind of life. Everyone works and helps each other. But the thing about this village is that it's surrounded by woods, and it is strongly recommended you do not go into the woods, because there are creatures in the woods. We have a truce with them. They don't come to the village. We don't go into the woods. They leave us alone. It's this, it's very well known that it's like, okay, no, we're safe here in the middle, and it's surrounded by woods, and we don't cross their boundary. So that's pretty much what it is. And drama ensues. We have Bryce Dallas Howard, Ron Howard's daughter, in her breakout role.
One of the central characters.
Joaquin Phoenix is in it, Adrian Brody, Judy Greer, Jesse Eisenberg in an early role.
I totally forgot about that.
Michael Pitt in an early role. So quite a lot of people in this film. Yes. So you can pull up a trailer on YouTube and you'll see some more. And then, so basically, it's like they get a sense that maybe this village isn't so safe, because the creatures are now coming into the village and warning them, leaving dead animals about, marks of blood on the door.
Yes.
And like, why would we do this? We've never done this before. What's going on? So that's the premise of the movie. So yeah, why don't you let us know what you thought?
I would say the earlier portion of the film is kind of setting the stage. I mean, it's introducing you to this very diverse world that we have. One of the things that I actually really liked right off the bat was the introduction to this living, breathing environment, and it felt very authentic. Again, I think everything was well done from the perspective of the homes, the clothes. I do take issue with the dialogue, which I'll get into a little bit more. I know one of M. Night Shyamalan's staples, which you'll be able to talk about better, is terrible dialogue. And I don't want to call it terrible dialogue, because I think he
awkward.
It was awkward. It was very stilted at times. But I do like the overall presentation of the film, and I like that he's kind of not holding your hand through it. Like, we kind of pick up right in the middle of the action. And it's an incredibly interesting living and breathing world. The introduction of Bryce Dallas Howard's character, where she does become the central figure, she's blind, for the record, but she kind of has this, what would you consider her ability, where she can kind of make out, she has this thing where she makes out colors.
She's very intuitive. She's very smart. I mean, she is blind, of course, but she's brilliant. She's very in touch with other people. She has like a heightened sense, not that it's a supernatural thing, like Daredevil or whatever, but she's very compassionate, empathetic. She's a very kind person, very mature, and she can pick up on other people's emotions. She can, she'll walk over to someone who's like, oh, your color is green, like it's good. She picks up on your energy. And one of the rules in the village, or I don't know about rule, but it's like the color red is bad. It attracts the creatures. So if you see red, get rid of it. There's a flower, bury it. Very interesting stuff.
Right, it is. And that's why, I think this was, which I'll get into a little bit more, but I think it was really a brilliant concept. I think that the execution was a little bit clumsy in places, namely the dialogue being one of them. And you're building this really interesting world. Bryce Dallas Howard, I think, was terrific. I mean, I think she's
in my opinion, I would have given her an Academy Award for the film, because she is so darn good.
She's really, really good at this. I kind of feel like some of the supporting characters didn't have much to work with, and again, that could tie into the dialogue, that could tie in their being maybe a little hesitancy to buy into old material. I don't know what kind of direction M. Night Shyamalan was giving these people, but William Hurt, who I think is a fantastic actor, he didn't really do too much for me in this film. And he has a colossal role in this, being the mayor, and then there's little bit of stuff starts to get a little duplicitous where, well, how early do you want to get into the spoilers?
I mean, let's go into it. I'll quickly just say that so overall, how do you feel?
It was mixed. It was
Mixed for you.
mixed to positive. I think that the ending actually does sort of redeem a lot of it for me, but I so much of that stilted dialogue, it was just very difficult at times.
So it was like your main issue with
My main issue was that, and then it did kind of take me out of this environment. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know what colonial America sounded like, but some of the dialogue was just a little cheesy and it was off-putting. And it's like, do I really imagine people at this time saying things like that? And I didn't buy some of that. But overall, I was impressed by it. Again, the scenery, the costumes, this brooding, dark atmosphere, I think was incredibly well done. And again, that's all like that sort of feeling of dread. That's like a staple of Hitchcock. I mean, like Psycho, the way that the tension sort of ramps up. I mean, there is tension in this film to be had. It's just nowhere near as good as I think that it could have been.
All right. So, yeah. Awesome.
I'd like to hear your personal opinion because I know you
I love the movie. I love the movie. I watched it, for this, and it was the first time I'd seen it in, like I said, probably over 10 years or so. And I was like, okay, so, in a way, fresh watch, even though I had seen it, in theaters and a few times on DVD, but I hadn't watched it since what I like to say, like the turning point, like when we went to film school and everything, because film school, side note, like ruins all your favorite movies because you dissect everything. Right. So I was nervous. I'm like, oh, I hope I still like this movie after film school. And I did. I liked it just as much as before. And what I love about the movie is obviously I love the ending of the film, and overall when you find out what the village is, I think it's brilliant, and it's a message I could totally understand and relate to. Prior to that, I really liked the movie and the characters. Certainly Bryce Dallas Howard and Joaquin Phoenix are the leads, as well as William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver, and they're all good, they're all interesting. So they work, and I think the chemistry is all there. Things start to slowly build up before the twist ending is revealed. And my only real issue with the film is that moments is a little too slow. I wish that things were turned up to 11 a bit more. There's a scene in the movie when the creatures do come into the village and everyone kind of hides in their basements, under their houses. And they'll look at the creature, like, even though it's not up close, like they'll see it in like the right side of the frame. It's I don't like the design. It's very obvious that it's somebody wearing a costume, let's just say. So I would have not done that if I was M. Night Shyamalan. It's very obvious it's someone wearing a costume, and it's like, what the heck? I mean, at least put on like, do some makeup effects like scaly skin or something like that. And it doesn't have to be great because it's never up close in your face and before the twist is revealed. And I would agree some of the dialogue is definitely a little silly. I chalk that up to one, M. Night. My problem, I actually really like him as a director, but even the best of the best stuff, like even in Sixth Sense, like some of his dialogue is just very weak. It feels very, it's almost like you reading a story, not just this movie, but M. Night's dialogue in general. It's like, would a person really say that? It almost feels like this romanticized speech, as if you were reading a book in school.
There were times where, Joaquin Phoenix was reciting some of his lines, and I'm like, who's this, like out of Romeo and Juliet or something?
Right.
Like that.
It's like, now we know, obviously, like in colonial times or Amish country or whatever, like obviously they're not going to be like, hey, what's up? You know, they're going to speak different. I get that. But then there are times where it's a little too exaggerated. So that's kind of like, I don't know about that. And I don't blame the actors for that. I mean, that's how they're directed. That's their instructor, because we got some really great people in this movie. So it would be like little nitpicky things. But I'm still, like, I'm enjoying it. And what makes the movie for me is the big reveal at the end. We figure out that takes place in present time.
Right.
And
this whole entire thing has been orchestrated by.
There are no creatures.
Right.
It is the elders dressing up as creatures and scaring people in the village. Why are they doing that? Because it takes place in present time, and the village was formed by maybe about a council of like 12 people, husbands and wives from the city, assuming Philadelphia, and who were just fed up with society, which I can totally relate. Sure. And I love that message. They were fed up with the everyday, the crimes, drugs, everyday modern day problems, assault, and each and every one of these elders has a story. Oh, my sister was assaulted in an alley next to our apartment. Oh, our son was killed, and people got got fed up with mainstream society and said, I have an idea. And they formed their own life in the village colony, because I think it was William Hurt's character's like grandfather was like super rich, and he did a lot of stuff in the town. So I think they were able, it's a quick line, but like they were able to pay somebody so no airplane, it's no flyover territory, and they were able to manipulate themselves and live off this land. And the creatures are a way to stop the people in the village from finding out that it's modern times, and that it's like, no, we're all keeping you in here. It's dangerous out there. And I mean, that to me, I think is probably one of my favorite twists in any movie, like one of, not the, but one of. And because it's a message that I totally relate to. And I really felt for some of these characters, especially the scene when you were hearing each of their story, and you're like, wow, I mean, who hasn't gotten fed up with everyday, gun violence or regular crime and drugs? And so, I mean, how many times, you joke like, oh, I just want to live in a cabin in the woods, because you get fed up. And to me, this is the ultimate version of that. But I'm talking too much.
Not at all. No, not at all. I mean, it's good to see how much this movie means to you. And I think, again, one of the really redeeming qualities of this movie for me was the ending. And it was, I don't want to say that I figured it out pretty early, but I began to sort of formulate.
Do you remember what point you got an idea?
I mean, I was pretty late in the movie, to be honest with you. I was still up to the point. There's a scene where William Hurt takes Bryce Dallas Howard to this shed, which is, the shed has never been opened. It's expressly prohibited for opening the shed, and he takes the key in, and then you kind of see what you think to be one of the monsters hanging from a hook.
Yes.
And of course that monster is just a costume.
Yes.
But again, what's really interesting at that point too is that now you're going to have Bryce Dallas Howard's character, who is blind, navigate these treacherous woods. Even if there is no creature, she begins to second guess herself. She kind of gets spooked a little bit when she's in the woods by herself, because her two companions leave her.
Yes.
And of course, the other important thing I think that we should stress is that while Bryce Dallas Howard's character is told that, this whole thing is kind of a sham, a facade, it's not something that gets out to the rest of the village.
Right.
So,
Brilliant.
Right. Brilliant. Because now there's the internal conflict that, she's going to navigate the woods and she's hoping to get some medicine to cure Joaquin Phoenix.
And I think it's where I probably should have mentioned it. It's like, well, why are we suddenly, because throughout the movie, why are the creatures coming here? Why are there skinned animals thrown out about? Why are there markings on our doors? Creatures have never done this. It's always been peaceful. And this is so brilliant, where it's like Joaquin Phoenix's character is stabbed by Adrian Brody's character, and it's all over jealousy, of love, and it's awesome. It so ties in with the ending, where it's like, look, the violence outside is now finding its way in, and
very well said.
It asks the question, you can't escape. You can't just barricade yourself in somewhere. It's going to find you.
Right.
And this is what happened. It was a crime based on jealousy, love. And it's like, so we're going to send Bryce into the towns to get some medicine so we could save his life. And I remember at the time, so many people, and I read reviews, it's so dumb that they sent her. She's blind. But William Hurt's like, exactly. She won't see anything. She won't know. Right. She doesn't know. and plus because she's so brilliant, she's so intuitive, and they do such an excellent job of providing examples of why her character's name is Ivy. Why is it Ivy? We have said you could send anyone. You could send Michael Pitt's character or whatever. Like, oh, go, go get it. But then the whole thing is blown.
Right. And that's actually, as much as I lambasted the dialogue, I do like the very sort of patent, when Bryce Dallas Howard jumps over the wall, she's kind of greeted by a patrolman who's patrolling the surrounding area. And there is a very, very marked difference in the way that Bryce Dallas Howard is speaking, thinking she's a 1700s, colonial.
No one says we have to make haste.
Right. And then you have some guy, he's like,
like
he's in his park ranger suit, and he's like, he thinks this is like a practical joke being played on him. I mean, this is like 2004, 2000, whatever the film was made. So that sort of juxtaposition I found to be very interesting. And also the ambiguity with the ending where, okay, maybe if she does even start to figure anything out, then there's going to be a very conscious choice. Does she uphold this facade?
We're going to have to trust her.
Right. The ending in itself, how did you feel about Bryce Dallas Howard walking in with the medicine in her hand only to find that her love is just passed away?
Is he dead though? That's controversial.
Oh, so you don't think he's dead?
I don't think so. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because watching the movie afterwards, I went online and, you read forums and opinions of many other viewers of, critics. And there seems to be is he dead? Is she too late? I don't know. I don't know if he died.
Maybe again, the pessimist in me says that he is dead.
Okay.
And I feel like that was all for naught, which I think would make that even more of a sort of interesting journey that she went on.
I always took it as, in the end, he's going to be saved.
Okay.
And
it's funny because that was,
I don't know,
that my gut impression, and I hadn't even really given it much thought until this point. I just did assume he was dead.
No, of course. A lot of people did, and then a lot of people didn't. I remember at that time, people were like, did he die? I don't know. It's kind of up for, we'd have to hear what the director says. But that's interesting. I had never thought in all my years of seeing, I never thought like, oh, he died. How would I feel if that was the ending? I'd be like, oh, that'd be kind of a bummer. Not because like I'm so hopeful, I'm like, oh, okay, great. But we do see at the end in a brilliant scene, and M. Night does this a lot, where he has these stagnant shots. He sets the camera up somewhere and lets it go for long periods of time. And they're always like lower, like angles, not like from the ground, but like maybe like waist, like there. And it's always like off to the side. So it's kind of like the audience, you're like the viewer looking in the room.
Right.
So when you have like, are we going to uphold, what are we going to do? Are we going to go back to the old way of life? Or are we going to uphold this village? And how they all slowly stand up at the end and they're like, we're going to keep this facade going. Right. I'm like,
and I do have to say, there were a few sort of subliminal directorial techniques that I appreciated. And this is kind of something that we watched recently. I mean, you watched Unbreakable, which is another Shyamalan film.
Yeah.
And the opening of Unbreakable, there's, Bruce Willis is on a train, and there's some really, really cool and say offensive camera techniques. I mean, offensive in the sense that I feel like anytime I'm taken out of a movie because of this really evident, like the camera's moving for no reason. I mean, for me, that's a sign of bad directing. Right. But there were moments where, from an artistic perspective, where a group of the elders were speaking, and the perspective of the camera was kind of like huddled behind the elders. And it was like, you're in the know, but you're not in the know.
Right.
And I thought that was brilliantly done. And there were a few techniques scattered throughout where I'm like, this was actually well made. Like, it was a well-made movie. So there were really certain techniques like that. It's funny because M. Night Shyamalan, and you can speak to this more than I can, he's had a pretty bad rep, because when he fell on hard times, he fell on hard times.
Because I think everybody was so shocked that it's like, if you look at his, like, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, The Village, overall, people are like, wow, 4 in a row. Right. These are great. And then he did this film called Lady in the Water, which was more fantasy thriller. And it was like, people didn't really respond to it. And then in 2008, he did The Happening with Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel.
After Earth, was that?
After Earth was 09, and it's
Okay.
like his movies like one
And
after
when
another.
was
They were
Avatar,
hard.
which is like,
Yeah, that to me doesn't really
Right.
count. Is that was maybe that was like 2010 or
Right.
maybe that was before. But it's like he started spinning out all these awful, ridiculous movies. They're not just like, that was disappointing, like unwatchable garbage. And then he started to redeem himself in 2015 with The Visit and Split and Glass. Split and Glass are part of the same universe trilogy as Unbreakable from 2000. And he kind of redeemed himself, and then Old came out, this year, 2021. And it's like, is he back? I mean, he's getting there. I liked Old, I actually did. But his early stuff is so perfect, and they're all so similar. And it's like when you watch his later stuff, it's like there's no sense of that. This could have been done by anybody.
right.
So,
And props to him too, because a lot of these works, and I'm sure especially like, he was the producer on some of these movies too. So
these were his movies.
he
wrote
literally
them.
did everything. And it's
He didn't write. He didn't write. It was like one of them. He didn't write. It's like he was just, like, I think, was it After Earth? I'm not sure offhand, but there were a couple like he didn't write. It was just director.
the earlier work of his, like the stuff that he's really known for. I
Mhm.
mean, they're his babies, and it's obviously one of the most romantic concepts to say, like, I want to be a film director and I want to write it and I want to,
Yeah.
direct it, and it's going to be my concept and I'm not going to have any sort of external influence. That's what people like dream of when you
Right.
walk into film school, and then you're like, well, ain't never going to happen. Quentin
And he got
Tarantino.
it. And look at how successful. I mean, The Sixth Sense got a Academy Award nominations.
Right.
Like
right.
that's crazy.
I mean, this is just stuff. It's interesting to see exactly what he started with, and that he was able to really.
And exactly. And if you watch those first 4 films, you could tell they're all by the same director, uses the same kind of music, the same setting, the same long shots, and you're like, this is what I love. Because when you're watching a Hitchcock film, you're watching North by Northwest, Vertigo. They all feel like they take place in the same universe. And a lot of like, even like on the flip side, you get Michael Bay, where it's like you're watching Transformers and Armageddon. You're like, yeah, they're ridiculous, but it's a Michael Bay movie.
Right. And like the paradigm for me would obviously, even in regards to someone like Quentin Tarantino. Well, Quentin Tarantino he's like, wouldn't you say he is the one director or one of the directors where, because he made like 2 really, really great no budget films,
right?
That he put together himself, he wrote and he directed them. I mean, that is like the paradigm for what every director wants to become. They want to become Quentin Tarantino. But guess what? He was working in a movie store and he was writing film scripts. So it's like,
right.
This is something that doesn't happen often, because Hollywood will like exert their influence some way or the other, and you compromise part of your vision to make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to see, and again, I don't know how much of it M. Night Shyamalan financed himself, but it's nice to see that someone is putting up their own capital if they have it, or they're raising the capital because they really, really believe in themselves and they want other people to see what they create.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of admirable to me.
Yeah, exactly. So final thoughts about
I mean, I was like I said, it was mixed to okay.
Mm-hmm.
The ending really saved it for me. And I almost wonder now, because I haven't seen much of M. Night Shyamalan these days, but do you almost feel like he's a slave to these twists where he's had his earlier
Yes,
movies,
but I love it.
You love it too.
I love it.
Like, do you think he feels like he has to one-up himself now with these movies where it's like, I gotta do something that people don't expect?
Yeah, I don't know how he feels, but like I hope he always does that. I mean, I can certainly tell you in some of his movies, there's more of a twist than others.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, okay, that's a little bit of a reveal. And then there's other movies where it's like, okay, there's a reveal, but it's not an M. Night reveal. It's like, no, it's exactly what the movie was. It's grounded in reality. But then it's like, oh, okay. And then this was revealed at the end. So it's like, oh, okay. But to me, his earlier stuff, those are the biggest twists.
Because as we'll get into, the next time that we convene with The Sixth Sense, I mean, that has one of the spoilers that you still hear about today. It's one of the biggest twists in maybe film ever. But
like in something like The Happening, it's like, there is no explanation. It just happens. And it's like, so, but then, you look, but then it's like he did The Visit. There's a twist ending. And then in Split, it's really not much of a twist ending. So, so I like the twists. You know, seeing Old in the theater, it was like I said, I overall liked the movie. I had issues, mainly the dialogue and the acting, but you know, the ending, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. Is it? You know, he does like what I call like the Twilight Zone kind of thing, where it's like you're watching Twilight Zone, say if it's a 25-minute episode, everything is going one way, and then at like minute 23, it's like the rug is pulled out for you, and you're like, oh, I like that as a viewer, though.
Right.
Not in every film that I see, but I like it from him, so I hope he doesn't get away.
One more thing I'll say specifically regarding this movie, because again, I hadn't seen it, and I guess I've done a pretty good job of avoiding the spoilers. I knew that there was some sort of a twist. I didn't know what the twist was, but I did feel like because enough of what was going on in the background, the protagonists, the main characters were interesting enough, and I was invested into it in the movie already. I feel like because I was expecting the twist at some point, I didn't know where it was coming. That also maintained my interest throughout, because I wanted to see what this was all about. So that was one thing that definitely kept me sort of involved towards the end, and I really was kind of hanging on the dialogue because I wanted to where's this exposition going to come from? So I thought that was well done.
All right. Cool.
Okay.
All right. So that is the end of our program. You can contact us, questions, comments, concerns, programs at cshlibrary.org. Next time we will be talking about M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense.
Who stars in that?
As Bruce Willis.
Mr. Bruce Willis. Okay.